What's up, everybody? Joe Patrick here, Dirty South Soccer here, back with the Atlanta United and England save, and this will sadly be the final episode. It brings me a lot of pain and sorrow to say that, especially because I myself was getting very excited for where we were as a team and where we were going, which was to the Europa League this year after we finished 7th last year in the Premier League and earned our spot. But the database has just gone screwy, and part of it was down to my own error in not adjusting things I didn't realize I needed to adjust before I set up the game. And now once we are in the game, there's no way to go back and readjust that. I actually bought another like kind of user-made editor to see if that would work, and that doesn't work either. So it's unfortunate. I feel really disappointed. I feel bad that I kind of led everybody on this path of what we were going to do in this save, and it's not possible to do it. But yeah, I'm sorry about that. But it wasn't all down to that. There are some things that just went screwy with the database. If we take a look, for example, we were not. You can see it's July 2nd in the save in the off season after our last season where we finished 7th, and I was trying to sell some players, and if you remember, we had this issue with Cedric Kipre that happened at the last winter window, where he agreed to a deal, or we agreed to a transfer for him, and then he just like didn't come to an agreement for a contract with the club, and the transfer fell apart. Same thing happened with Jonathan Gonzalez this offseason, and then most interestingly, we had Miles Robinson and Anton Walks who were set to leave on free contracts. Anton Walks, for some reason, did end up leaving, but Miles Robinson, if we take a look at this, look at it, his contract now expires in January 2nd of 1900. So things are going screwy, and I don't think it's going to let me sell any players, which is sad. I had actually agreed a deal for 32 million pounds to sell Jonathan Gonzalez. It wasn't all up front. I think it was like 20 million up front with a bunch of add-ons based on appearances and stuff. But that would have been huge. And like honestly, to run a save, like you need to be able to operate in the transfer market. You have to be able to make those kinds of sales. Like we can't just only depend on the money that we get from the board. And I'm not sure if this came through in the last episode. Actually, definitely not, because I'm not going to go back. I did film a triple header end of the season type thing, where we finished out the year last year and got our new transfer budget. But if we look at our finances, I actually went back and edited this back in because I was so frustrated. But we had $26 million at one point to spend, and then all of a sudden it just like went away one day, and we had $4 million, and it was just infuriating. I don't know why that was happening. It's not normal, and it shouldn't have happened, but anyway, so the whole thing is just kind of falling apart, and we could still go through and play the Premier League, but again, like, if we're going to be so hindered and I have to make like crazy edits, just like randomly editing back in based on my best guess of how much transfer budget we should have and stuff like that, it's just too much hassle, and it's not worth it, and it just it just kind of takes out any sense of reality or any sense of, the feeling of reality we have when we play this game. So anyways, with that out of the way, I did just kind of want to go through and just take a look at our club and what we've been through over the years. I was just taking a look at, here's the best 11, which the game kind of codes. I'm not sure actually the formula they use, but this is kind of this is what they would consider our best 11. And again, this is not in terms of like the players' abilities now, but it's just kind of like their importance to the team over the time and based on where we were at that point in time. So like a guy like Jeremy Helene, who helped us after we finished 12th in the first season, helped us win the championship. Same with Miles Robinson. I mean, those two played every game together just about. Remember Vlad Dragomir? He was playing every game for us in central midfield, and we signed Jonathan Gonzalez early on. He was one of our big signings early. We bought him for £6.5 million. He was one of those guys that I bought in the winter transfer window during that first season when I realized that we definitely needed a lot of help. He was a guy that I thought was fun to go after because he has American ties, obviously dual national, being a Mexican American. So that was fun. They've still got Rafael Leao up there, even though if we look at Erling Haaland over here on the bench, he has the highest average rating by anyone by far. Kind of interesting. Pity Martinez still out there. He was obviously huge for us. He was the player of the year in the championship, the year that we won it and went up. And look what's happened to him. I was actually taking a look at this earlier on. 14 appearances after we sold him to Inter for £45 million and did not contribute to one single goal in those 14 appearances. Ended up going on loan to CSK, Moscow, and still was like decent, but not great. He actually had a really good average rating compared to the amounts of goals he was contributing to. But we would have probably been able to get him back. He came up in my scouting reports, and he was very affordable. I'm not sure if it will show up here. Let's see if we go to reports. No, okay. Anyways, he came up as like we definitely could have bought him and afforded him, but the fact that he's already 30 and he's not going to improve, I wouldn't have done it anyway. But kind of interesting there. So just taking a look back, I want to look at some of the players. Like if we look at George Bello, look at how much he improved over our time. I mean, look at that improvement. That's really cool to see. You don't see that too often with a lot of players. George obviously had a lot of potential starting out with him, and it was really cool to have a player like him who was able to not just be on the team for the duration of the save, but actually be like an important player, a player that I would definitely start whenever he was healthy, even when we were competing for Europa League. And if we were to have kept this going, I think he would have been a guy that be our first choice left back when we were playing in the Premier League. I mean, he was only getting better and better as the game went on. And what was interesting to me is actually he got better kind of in all facets. It wasn't just the technical or the mental or the physical or the speed. It was everything. In fact, he actually got quite a bit quicker over his time. And yeah, that was just really cool to see. I do want to jump back and take a look at how we did finish. I filmed this triple header, but I'm not going to go to the trouble to edit it and everything. But take a look at how he finished. I mean, we lost a game to Everton, and then we beat West Ham, and then we beat Liverpool on the final day. To be perfectly honest, this game did not matter. It was a complete dead rubber. We already had 7th completely locked up at this point, and Liverpool was already locked into, I think, maybe they could have fluctuated between 3rd and 4th based on the result of this game, but they were going to be in the Champions League regardless. So still like really cool to have a big win against them. And I think that with that win, we definitely beat Liverpool. We definitely beat Man City a couple times in this save. We beat Chelsea. We beat Arsenal, and we beat Tottenham. And I don't know if we ever beat Manchester United. They may be the ones who got the better of us every time. I'm looking through. It didn't look like we beat them last year at all. Did we beat them? Oh, we did. We did get a win against Manchester United last year. So we beat every team in the top 6 at one point or another, which is pretty cool. I did want to show you guys just some of the transfers that I'd already been making this window, just to kind of show what we were doing. Again, it's kind of weird to talk about it now, knowing that the save isn't going to go on any longer. But this is a guy that we got from Mexico. He came up as like one of the best players I had in all my scouting reports, regardless of whether they were affordable or not, in terms of his potential. And he looked like he was going to be great. Really interesting player here because he's a central midfielder, but he has tons of speed. Look at that, 19 pace. I mean, you don't come across players like that very often, especially at only 19 years old. I bet that his pace would have gone up to 20 and his acceleration would have jumped up a little bit too. And I just felt like we needed less playmakers. We had, over the last couple of years, you guys will have seen, we acquired so many players that were like very technical, very, just playmakery. Like they wanted to be on the ball. They weren't super mobile. Like that wasn't the strength of their game. And so I felt like we needed more players, and we started having a lot more success with this down the stretch during the second half this year, where in central midfield, we actually weren't playing with any playmakers. We were only playing with the playmaker that was either sitting deep as a deep line playmaker or as a number 10. And so these central midfielders were just kind of like ball winners, generic central midfielders, that kind of thing. And I felt like this guy would have fit one of those roles, one of those non-playmakery type of roles. Like I probably would have played him as this like Mazzala, which is kind of like a box-to-box midfielder. And so I'm kind of disappointed we didn't get to use this guy, but he would have been fun. As you can see, his media description is a wonder kid, which is always a signal that they're very, very good. So unfortunate we didn't get to play with him, and I think we would have done really well with him. But this guy, I mean, I talked about not having playmakers. This was the guy I was going to have be my new deep lying playmaker, who would have been our main central playmaker in the game. I was going to bring in him, so he's very technical, just great player. I couldn't believe we got him on such a cheap deal. I'd never heard of him either. He came from Gremio. I think it was Argentinos Juniors, yeah, that he played for originally. So I'd be interested to see if you guys have heard of this guy. I guess he in real life he would play for this Argentinos Juniors right now. But I was going to play with him as a deep lying playmaker, and then play Ezequiel Barco more as the number 10, but not play him in a playmaker role. Play him more as like a shadow striker type of guy, someone who's going to run beyond. We just need more runners, essentially, I think is what we needed. Again, I've talked about this in some episodes, and Frank de Boer has talked about it in real life, and I think that it's something that Atlanta United in real life has struggled with from time to time, especially in Frank's first season, which was you have too many playmakers on the field who want the ball and want to like find pockets and receive the ball at their feet, and not enough players who are running forward, driving at the opposition backline and kind of forcing the shape to change and forcing them to readjust organizationally in real time. And so I feel like with a combination of Fausto Vera as that playmaker guy who was also extremely strong defensively that you could have in the middle of the park, sitting in front of the back four or in central midfield, and then combined with just more of those runners up ahead of him, I think we would have had a ton of success. And then lastly, I just bought this guy who was going to be kind of the backup striker for us. He has huge determination, so I think he would have been a guy who grows a ton in the game. I think he would have been really good, and he would have been definitely a guy more for the future, but he would have gotten some playing time, and we just kind of needed somebody who could come in and be a backup to Erling Haaland, and someone who had a little bit more potential, because Joseph Martinez, we would have played him as much as we could, but he was turning 30 and kind of on the decline, so wanted to get in somebody else who would have just given us more potential, given us more reason to put him in the game. David Brooks was one I really wanted to bring in as an inside forward and hopefully move on Xavier Amici. As you can see, his attributes fit just absolutely perfectly with an inside forward. Especially, you don't see many that have the ability to finish, and David Brooks at a 15 was able to do that. So he would have been nice to bring in. And at 25 years old, and just David Brooks in general, I feel like he's not a player who is destined for great things in this game, but I feel like he's one of those guys who you can get sometimes who, if you can bring them into a perfect situation, in a perfect role for them, and they can put up numbers in 1 year, they can obviously help you in that year, and you can move them on and make a huge profit off of them just based on what they did for you. And that's kind of what I was thinking with Brooks, because there wasn't really any young players that really stuck out to me as someone I would want to pay a huge sum for and bring in long term, but I felt like David Brooks was a guy we could have brought in, and he would have done very, very well for us. He would have slotted right in because he already has Premier League experience, already, speaks the language and all that. It wouldn't have been like a huge adjustment for him, and I feel like he just would have been able to settle in really nicely and perform right away for us. But unfortunately, it was not to be. I do want to go into this dynamics screen a little bit, because it's not something I think I ever covered in a video, and it's not something that's super important, but it is kind of fun to go back and look at. Joseph Martinez and Ezequiel Barco were two of our team leaders. I think most of us would expect that from someone like Joseph Martinez, but it's kind of funny to see how Ezequiel Barco has grown in this game and has grown in his role with the team in terms of, not just on the field, because now in real life, he's obviously a key player for Atlanta United in terms of what he brings to the team technically and tactically and all that, but not really like someone who is, ingrained as like some Atlanta legend figure. So it's kind of funny to see him with this role on the team, and then Jack Butland, obviously, mainly because Jack Butland was just playing every game. Bello, also a very highly influential player in the squad. Good to see Erling Haaland already grow into that role after just 1 year. So that's how that worked. And if we see the social groups, essentially, there's not a ton to take from this because we just had a group together for so long that so many of them became involved in the core social group. But it is kind of a cool dynamic that Football Manager uses, and it's all based on like kind of the languages they speak and where they come from and that kind of thing. To show how kind of clusters, people naturally cluster together with people who are like-minded or do they just feel comfortable with. So at the beginning of the game, this may have looked a little bit different, but kind of funny to see how that looked. And then everybody on the team's pretty happy, obviously, with the way that things were going. I think training was the only thing because there's just some glitches that happened in the summer. One of the things I should explain this was during the summers, since Atlanta United is on a summer schedule in the game, like in real life, how you would play an MLS season, they would never send the players away on like a vacation at the end of the season. They would just go back to training throughout the entire off season and until the game started for the next season. So I would actually have to, as you can see, they're all had this yellow rest thing. I had to manually tell them like, do not play soccer, go away, have a break. So that's kind of funny. And so, but anyways, the game makes it so they're like unhappy, wanting to rest and all that. This is kind of a funny screen looking at the finances in terms of the salaries, that just the overall wage budget of the club. When we started, it was £215,000, which I'm not sure how that works because we definitely had players on some decent contracts, like when you look at Pity Martinez, Joseph Martinez, I would think. I don't know how that works, but anyway, and then by the end, or I guess this is per week, so I guess that makes sense. And then by the end, we were at 1.57 million. So pretty, maybe not exponential growth there, but pretty steady all the way up. And you could see it was probably definitely too low when we started. You could see that just that small bump. That was me not wanting to mess with the squad too much in the first transfer window. Actually, this was January. Well, we were making transfers at this point because our first game wasn't until here, August-ish of 2019. So we had this whole time to make the initial transfers, and as you can see, we just barely bumped it up from 215K is where we would have started to, where were we here? It's not going, 319K, so not too much. And then you could see that first January, that first winter transfer window, I was like, oh crap, the squad is not nearly good enough. And we only finished 12th that year, that first year in the championship. Here's an overall look at our general income that we brought in through various sources, over the lifetime of our save. And this just gives you really good perspective on what making the Premier League looks like for a team. This is the Premier League spike. When we got that TV money, that is a game changer. And you can see why for teams in real life that come up to the Premier League, again, how big of a difference maker that is for them, not just in terms of the playing squad, but to be able to use that income to things like improving the staff and improving the facilities that, some of these older English clubs may not have these state-of-the-art facilities like Atlanta United has. That's just such a huge game changer, and every year you can stay in it, that just increases it even more. You think of a team like in real life, like Bournemouth, who was not a Premier League team until 3 years ago or so. And when you get that kind of money for 3 years in a row, it totally changes the entire trajectory of where the club was going. It's funny, in college, I actually knew a guy who was from Bournemouth and talked about the soccer team. He wasn't like a huge soccer guy because Bournemouth just like wasn't an established team, or not an established team, but like they just weren't good. Like they weren't like the talk of the town, that kind of thing, typically when he was growing up. But now they're in a totally different place, and I think that he's now a much bigger Bournemouth fan than he used to be, but it just goes to show how big of a difference that makes for any team. All right, let's catch up with some of our former players, we never had Miguel Almiron in this save, but did want to just kind of check on him. He's kind of become a Newcastle lifer here. He's 29 years old, has 60 caps for Paraguay with 13 goals. Really good goal return for him on the international stage. Not quite as good with Newcastle, but still has been just an every game starter for them. 38 appearances, played every single game last year for Newcastle in the Premier League, and I'm sure he would have played. These were the reason he's probably not at 38 in these last 2 years is down to injuries or something like that. So pretty solid career. I mean, that's that goal contribution is probably about what you would expect for someone like Miguel, and those are just Premier League. He would have had more in in all competitions. Here we can see it. Well, yeah, look at his international. So like last year, he had 4 goals in the league, 38 appearances. He had 5 goals for Paraguay in 10 appearances. So pretty impressive there. And I think I mentioned in the World Cup recap, he actually had the third highest average player rating of any player that participated in the World Cup. Part of that was down to the fact that Paraguay only played 3 games, but still pretty impressive. Frank de Boer in the game is unemployed, which is kind of surprising because his stats are really great for a manager. Look at this. Just the mentals are really, really good. 20 motivating is interesting. 19 working with youngsters, really good. Obviously, good defending coach. But he hasn't just been unemployed since he left. He took a job with Getafe after we took over for him at Atlanta United, and actually did pretty well with Getafe. He had a Europa League run and left as their coach when he looked like he got poached by Schalke, who he was with for a couple years. Had some Europa League success with them, but eventually were knocked out, and then he finished 5th with Schalke in 2022, and which would have been the year prior to this, and that was his last job there. Jeff Lorenowitz, now a coach at DC United. Of course he's going to be a coach. Was there any other option for him? Michael Parkhurst, just relaxing in retirement. It says he's an unemployed coach, but it just means that, lots of players will go on to, just be unemployed like that. Kevin Kratz is the same. Did anybody do anything interesting here? Brandon Vazquez still going with this team. Universidad Autónoma de Estadio de Mexico. So I guess he's in Mexico. I don't believe that that's in the first division. He's in, promotion league. So some lower league Mexican team is where Brandon Vazquez is. Kisidu is, I guess we sold him to Brisbane. Now he's just making his way somewhere in the world. Any other notables? Leandro Gonzalez Perez. What's he up to now? Still playing in, I believe this is Saudi Arabia. I'm not sure, somewhere in the Middle East. Kind of surprised he hadn't moved since then. His average rating is very good, but I guess you would expect that in the UAE. Eric Remedi we sold to Alaves, and he is still at Alaves, playing every game for them in Spain in the first division in La Liga. Pretty cool. Good for Eric. Julian Gresso we sold to a lower league German team, and it looks like he's still with that team. I'm not even going to try to pronounce that. Like, what? What is that? Anyway, looks like he's been playing most games for them as well in Bundesliga 2. Pretty solid career. It looks like they did get demoted, though. He was about to play in the third Bundesliga. Florentin Pogba is retired at, how old? 32? Kind of an early retirement there. This is funny. Mikey Ambrose is playing for Preston, who Preston replaced us in MLS. I gotta take a look at how Preston's been doing. I hadn't even considered them. Okay, so their media prediction was 3rd. Let's just take a look at MLS's results over the last couple years. Has Preston? Okay, yeah. So Preston finished 2nd. I guess they're still ongoing with the league right now. It's the middle of the summer. Let's take a look at how things shook out over these last couple years in MLS. So these are going to be regular season results in 2022, and it looks like the conferences have all changed up. This is strange. Like, it's a complete mess. There's no rhyme or reason to how the teams are in these new conferences. You can see the Eastern Conference has everyone from San Jose to DC United to Columbus to Montreal, and the West has Philly and LAFC and Inter Miami, and that's fascinating. Where's Preston? Okay, so they did make the playoffs there. Let's just go to MLS Cup. See who won MLS Cup. San Jose won it in 2022 over Seattle. Interesting. Unfortunately, I can't see the match report, but I just wonder if they won it last year. They probably still have some interesting players. Ooh, wow. That's a nice looking regen right there. An 18-year-old? Shoot. I would have bought this guy. Holy cow. Where'd he come from? Came from Velez. Interesting. It was clearly a designated player signing there for San Jose. In 2021, it was also San Jose. So they went back-to-back. They beat LAFC in the final, which is kind of funny. considering they're both Eastern Conference. And then NYCFC got their first title in 2020 against FC Dallas. And who did it in 2019? Columbus Crew over Red Bulls. So kind of, that's crazy. How were they even playing against each other in the final in 2019? I wouldn't have moved either of those clubs. I don't know. See, it's probably something with the database. The way, again, the fact that I edited it before just moving teams into different leagues, it probably just screwed some things up. So, kind of unfortunate that all of that happened. Again, I feel really bad, but that's kind of interesting to see what happened there. So this is interesting. Jeremy Helene I sent back to Newcastle. Oh no, I bought him from Rennes. Okay, but I sent him to Newcastle. He made 32 appearances his first year in Newcastle, and then he could never really get in the team after that. Went on loan to Denmark, played for Copenhagen. Didn't even make a real breakthrough with them. So kind of interesting what happened to him, even though he was super successful with us. Here's an interesting one. Kelvin Amian, who was a guy who always performed well for us. I just felt like we could cash in on him. Had a decent little season with Brighton after we sold him, or a couple seasons. 28 appearances for Brighton in the Premier League, and then 27 in the Premier League. But again, if you look at that, that's pretty much what he would have given us if we had kept him in the Premier League. And for me, I just felt like we got better results from what we had in Kyle Walker-Peters. We already went through Gonzalo, Martinez, Emerson Hyndman. Sold him to Empoli, still with Empoli. I guess a lot of these players, it's only been 2 years since I sold some of these players, so I'd be kind of surprised if they had moved to different clubs. Hasn't really not nailed down a starting spot with Empoli, but it's a tough tough in Serie A. It's always going to be a challenge. Darlington Nagbe's out in Japan, I think this is. Oh no, South Korea. Just dominating the South Korean league. Look at that. 12 goals, 11 appearances, or 12 goals and 11 assists in 36 appearances last year for them. Incredible. All right, y'all, so that's going to be it. That's going to wrap up our series. I hope that anybody who was watching this who was not really familiar with Football Manager was able to kind of learn a little bit about the game, and I would encourage you to give it a go yourself. We're in a time where normally I wouldn't recommend Football Manager to a lot of people because it is a huge time suck, and it's the reason I don't get to play it as often as I would normally like to. But we're in a time in the world right now where a lot of us have time, so I would definitely give it a go. If you're a guy or gal who likes to play like career mode in FIFA over playing Ultimate Team or whatever, Football Manager is a career mode on steroids, as you can see. But it's super fun if you kind of love getting into the minutia of it all. It's really cool. I don't know what this just clicked, but this is kind of our ratings. Our tactical style is a vertical tiki-taka. Anyway, so I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you do play the game, and you want to continue this, let me know. Message me on Twitter, JAPatrick200, and I can try to see if I can save the database and save the save file so that you guys could actually just pick it up and play it from here. But again, you're not going to be able to play in any Champions League or Europa League. You will basically only be able to play in England, and I can't guarantee you'd be able to make many player sales, so that could be an issue. But if you want to give it a go, feel free. Just let me know. Just tag me on Twitter, and I'll see what I can do. So with that out of the way, again, thank you guys so much for watching this and for just like hanging in there with me and giving me something to do during this time. Hopefully all of you guys are out there staying safe, staying physically distanced, not just socially distanced, but physically distanced, I feel like is the word that needs to be used from other people. And if you do, so many of us now are getting to the point where we know people who are starting to suffer from this coronavirus thing. So if anybody out there, if you sending all my strength and, thoughts to you guys as you deal with this as well. So, thanks for joining with me on this crusade, and maybe we'll do another one soon. We'll talk to you guys later.